Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into leadership, but we're coming at it with a metric that's, well, it's pretty counterintuitive for most places.
Yeah, it really challenges how we usually measure success, doesn't it?
Totally. We've gathered some really powerful sources, and they kind of force you to check your ego at the door. Here's the core question that got us started. Is your real influence measured by how many people report to you or how many leaders you actually raise up?
Hmm, that's the heart of it. And
Yeah.
that question right there, it exposes a major weakness we're seeing across all kinds of organizations, businesses, nonprofits, you name it.
What kind of weakness are we talking about?
Well, the sources are pretty clear. The real crisis isn't usually a lack of market or opportunity. It's what the material bluntly calls a shortage of shepherds.
Shortage of shepherds. Okay.
Yeah, meaning we have plenty of followers, customers, employees, whatever you want to call them. But there's a real kind of dangerous lack of capable reproducing leaders who can carry the mission forward.
So that old model, the one we've relied on for maybe the last 50 years,
Yeah.
find the superstar, the charismatic figure,
Right, the hero leader.
and pour everything into supporting them, that's the default, isn't it? Use their success to drive the numbers.
It was the default. And, it worked for a while, gave those short-term wins.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at, they're now calling that approach a liability
A liability, why?
because it creates this massive bottleneck. It's inevitable, really, if that one key person burns out or gets a better offer or just decides to move on.
Then the influence just stops dead and the whole organization gets shaky.
Exactly. So this deep dive, it's about finding the antidote. And that antidote is this idea of embedding multiplication DNA.
Multiplication DNA, okay.
It's about making a conscious shift, moving away from just adding numbers,
Mm.
more people in seats, bigger attendance. That's just arithmetic growth.
Right, simple addition.
To something more powerful. Exponential generational reproduction. We're digging into this ancient idea, really, about entrusting what you know to reliable people who will then go and teach others too.
That concept, it leads straight to what the sources call the uncomfortable truth, doesn't it?
It really does.
Which is, if your organization, your ministry, whatever it is, relies entirely on that one dynamic leader, it's basically got an expiration date stamped on it, that person's shelf life is the organization's shelf life.
That's it. It's the classic founder syndrome, but it happens at all levels when leaders just don't reproduce themselves.
So how do you fight that? The leader's focus has to shift, fundamentally.
Completely. You can't keep prioritizing those vanity metrics, the attendance charts, the revenue figures, how impressive things look right now.
Even though that's what often gets rewarded.
Right. But you have to shift focus to building generational charts of leadership capacity.
Yeah.
It's valuing the lineage, the ongoing competence over just the splash you make today.
It's fascinating how deep this goes in the source material. They treat multiplication less like a tactic and more like almost a natural law.
Well, that's the core insight, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at successful systems, truly sustainable ones, they're designed to replicate. It's baked into life itself. The whole be fruitful and multiply idea.
Ah, okay. Life produces life.
Life produces life. It's expansive, it moves outwards, and that pattern becomes the blueprint for leadership that lasts.
And the historical models point to this too, right? Focusing on developing a small core group that can reproduce rather than just going for immediate, massive scale.
Exactly. Think about apprenticeship, but really lived out apprenticeship by incarnation, as one source put it. Being present, modeling the practice before releasing people. It wasn't just lectures.
So if a leader holds onto influence too tightly, prioritizes their own position over developing others.
They're actively working against that fundamental principle. It requires what you might call an anti-accumulation mindset, giving it away, not hoarding it.
That's got to be the hardest part. The ego loves to accumulate, right? Biggest team, budget, title. How do we break that habit? What are the non-negotiables, the genetic markers for this multiplication DNA?
The sources boil it down to three core principles. These have to be like the genetic code. First one, reproducibility over impressiveness.
Okay, untack that.
It means if the way you do ministry or your key business process is so complicated or so dependent on your specific genius that nobody else can really copy it.
Then it can't multiply.
Exactly. If only you can do the magic trick, the magic stops when you leave the stage.
So if your method needs like a PhD and $1 million budget, you're basically designing it not to be reproduced. That forces you to simplify things, doesn't it?
It forces simplification, yeah, and
Yeah.
modularity, making things teachable. The second principle, and this one's maybe the most critical, character before competence.
Okay. Why that order?
Because if you just multiply leaders based on their skills, they can sell iced Eskimos or preach amazing sermons, but you haven't prioritized their integrity, their spiritual health.
You could be multiplying something toxic.
You absolutely could. You end up scaling dysfunction.
Yeah.
So what multiplies has to be healthy. It's basic risk management, really.
That makes sense. And the third one, you mentioned it changes how we train people.
Yes, the teach-to-teach methodology. This isn't just about transferring information to someone.
It's about equipping them to transfer it again.
Precisely.
Yep.
Every single training moment, whether it's a formal session, a quick briefing, even a debrief after a project, it needs a secondary goal baked in.
Which is?
Enabling that learner to turn right around and teach that same content or skill to someone else. It creates this recursive loop. You learn not just to do, but to teach.
That recursive idea, teaching others who will teach others, that brings us straight to this 4-generation blueprint. But hang on, let's pause there. Why 4 generations? How deep does this pipeline really need to go? Isn't getting to generation 2 or 3 hard enough?
It's a fair question. Why G4? When the mandate is to entrust things to faithful people, who will then teach others also, it implies depth. It's about building organizational resilience, not just filling the next immediate slot. Think of it like institutional memory.
Okay, break down the generation.
So generation 1 is the source, the founder, the initial teacher, Paul in the Sick and Timothy example. Generation 2 is the apprentice, Timothy, the one directly receiving the DNA.
Got it.
Generation 3 is the reliable people, the ones Timothy equips, the direct multipliers. But here's the key. Generation 4 is the others. They're the future harvest, the ones taught by Generation 3.
So G4 ensures the knowledge, the DNA, actually survives beyond the first couple of links in the chain.
Exactly, because so often, this is where it breaks down, right? The pipeline just dead ends at G2, maybe G3. G2 gets busy doing the work.
And forgets or doesn't prioritize reproducing themselves.
And the DNA dies with them. That's what the sources call the crisis of legacy. Leaders pour everything into the work, but don't embed themselves in others. So their influence just stops when their season is over. Leadership becomes this bottleneck.
Often because G2 leaders might feel threatened or just genuinely swamped.
Both happen, but the real work of leadership, according to this model, isn't just doing the job faithfully, it's reproducing faithfully.
So the question we should be asking isn't just, who are you training to take your job?
No, it's deeper. It's, who are they training to take theirs? Every leader needs to be thinking 3 generations deep. Me, the person I'm equipping, and the person they are preparing. If you can't map that out...
Your legacy is fragile.
Very.
And you mentioned this isn't just a church thing. The sources had real-world examples.
Yeah, the South Asian Church Network example was powerful. Every elder is required, it's part of the structure, to intentionally mentor 2 future elders. Yeah. So think about the resilience that builds. If one elder steps down for any reason, retirement, sickness, moves away, there are already 2 people being actively prepared to fill that gap. It's proactive, not reactive. It's structure.
Okay, so we see the why. Let's get practical. This sounds intensive, time-consuming, maybe expensive. How do you actually embed this multiplication DNA? What are the tools, the frameworks that make it work without just grinding everything else to a halt?
Right, it needs structure, not just good intentions. The sources point to 3 key elements for implementation. First, the rhythms.
Rhythms, meaning?
Succession has to be part of a regular, predictable schedule, not just a one-off training event or a conference. Think things like a weekly one-on-one mentoring session plus a practical assignment.
Okay, so consistent, scheduled interaction, not just coffee once a month.
Exactly. It's got to be built into the workflow.
Boom.
It demands real time, especially from senior people.
You have to prioritize it.
You have to see it as the priority for long-term health. Second element, focused content design. Your training materials need to be modular and easily teachable.
No giant binders that no one can digest.
Definitely not. Think short, reproducible units. The sources suggest like 20 to 45 minutes covering one transferable skill or concept. Concise enough that the person learning it can quickly turn around and teach it.
Like standardized training modules in business almost, designed for easy transmission.
Very similar idea. And the third element,
Yeah.
structured pipelines. These are the practical pathways, things like formal mentoring programs, discipleship groups in a faith context, or leadership apprenticeships in business. They need to be recognized, tracked, maybe even rewarded.
Making it visible and valued. The
Right.
sources even had a sample 12-week outline, didn't they? Showing what this looks like week by week.
Yeah, and that outline is interesting because it shows the balance. You're reproducing both character and competence. So, like, week 2 might be very practical. How to craft a 20-minute reproducible lesson, ticking that teach-to-teach box.
Okay, skill-based.
But then, maybe week 6 focuses on something like conflict as formation, teaching the apprentice how to navigate pressure, disagreement with integrity, because the skills mean nothing without the character to handle them well.
That brings up a huge point for anyone managing a team or running an organization. If we shift focus from just attendance or profit, what do we measure? How do KPIs change?
You have to measure what actually builds the future. Leaders raised. We need metrics that value reproduction over accumulation. The key metric proposed is the reproduction rate, or R rate.
Okay, how's that defined?
Simple definition. Liters produced per leader per 12-month cycle.
And this is where the math gets kind of mind-blowing, right? Because we usually think linearly, but this is about compounding.
Exactly. Let's say you're really aggressive, aiming for R2. Every leader produces 2 new leaders each year. You start with 1. In 5 years, that's 32 leaders. Exponential.
Wow. But R2, doesn't that feel like it risks scaling too fast? Maybe sacrificing quality? Seems potentially unstable.
It's a valid concern. And that's why the sources also emphasize the power of just intentional, faithful growth. Look at R1.5.
So each leader produces, on average, 1.5 liters per year.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 liter one year, 2 the next.
Right. Still sounds modest. But that one initial leader, after 5 years, they yield about 7.6 liters. Compare that to linear growth R1, just replacing yourself, where you'd only have 6 liters total after 5 years.
That difference, 7.6 versus 6, just from that little bump to 1.5, it compounds significantly over time. That's the resilience factor.
It really is. Small, faithful reproduction adds up way faster than you'd think.
Okay, but you mentioned risks. Multiplication without maturity sounds like a recipe for disaster. What safeguards must be in place so that R1.5 doesn't just replicate problems?
Crucial safeguards. First, leaders have to avoid cloning. This isn't about creating mini-me.
Right.
It's about transferring core truths, essential principles, transferable skills, not forcing everyone to adopt your specific style or cultural preferences. You need diversity, local adaptation.
Makes sense.
What else? Second, you have to actively fight against power hoarding. This means creating really clear, transparent pathways for new leaders to emerge. Public commissioning, clear roles, making it obvious that the goal is to give away authority and responsibility, not just delegate tasks while keeping control.
So the aim isn't just creating functionaries, people who can do tasks for you.
No, that just maintains the bottleneck in a different way.
It's about creating autonomous leaders who can also reproduce faithfully.
Exactly. Leaders who expand the whole system's capacity, not just their own team's output.
So let's bring this home. What does this mean for, say, someone listening who runs a tech startup, or manages a sales team, or leads a school? Is this DNA portable?
Completely portable. This framework is fundamentally about building succession-ready teams, and that applies everywhere.
How so?
Think about it in a corporate setting. What if a manager's performance review, their bonus, was partly tied to how well they mentored and released high-potential people on their team? What if mentorship was literally built into the KPIs?
You'd solve the succession pipeline problem pretty quickly, wouldn't you?
You'd solve it before it even starts. The principles, proximity, developing character alongside skills, intentional release, they work across sectors. It's about human development and sustainable systems.
I really like that little parable the sources use to illustrate the mindset shift. The 2 gardeners.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The first gardener, he wanted this spectacular, famous orchard, planted rare, complex trees, guarded it closely. Only he knew the secrets. People came to admire it, sure.
Impressive, but contained, limited.
And the second gardener.
The second gardener taught a child how to sow seeds, showed them about the soil, how life works, gave them seeds, encouraged them to plant all over the village.
He multiplied himself by giving away the knowledge, the keys, the process.
Exactly. The first gardener's legacy, however grand, was finite. It ended with him. The second gardener's legacy, it spread everywhere, took on a life of its own, precisely because he focused on making apprentices, on reproduction.
That's the leadership model we're talking about, the second gardener's way.
It's choosing the infinite echo of reproduction over the maybe louder but definitely finite roar of accumulation.
Which leaves us with that final thought for you, the listener, to take away this week. Don't just think about the projects you're managing or the numbers you're hitting. Ask yourself, who are you intentionally raising up? Will your leadership multiply into generations you might never even see?
Because that kind of influence, the kind that reproduces,
Yeah.
that becomes an echo. And that echo outlives buildings, budgets, even biographies.